What got you here won't take you any further. And who the heck wants to be at a standstill for the next 12 months? Over the next 3 episodes, we're giving you insider access to the Inflection Business Coaching Program. Normally, this content would only be available through our paid course, but we wanted to share 3 of our favorite coaching calls with you to give you more insight into what we talk about, how we run the program, and how our coaching calls are structured. And in case you missed it, we're doing an end of financial year offer in the next couple of weeks. So visit the link in our show notes for direct access. Also, did you know you can pay for business coaching through your business? Danil, our registered chartered accountant, has confirmed it. So, if you're ready to take back control of your business, your career, and just get some balance back into your life, then join us on the 2nd of July for a whole new program. Visit the link in our show notes and join our free community for access. In this final session of the Inflection Sneak Peek, Jordan is running through the foundations of creating and setting up a business strategy. Everything from what a business strategy actually is, the power of the now, where, how, and an exercise that you can do at home.
Hey everyone, I'm just going to be running through business strategy. So I'm going to do a bit of an introduction to all the different tools that we use internally at Inflection that I've used at Grayspace. And I know Owen's used them before at Rask as well. And I'm just going to talk high level through them about what's involved, how you can use them, regardless of your industry or what your business does. So to jump in, it's actually one of my favorite things to do is to talk about business strategy and how you can use it in your business. And I find a lot of the time as a business owner, me personally, and be interested to hear other people's thoughts as well, I find that we have all of these ideas and sometimes it's just information overload and we don't really know where to start. I find that when we're running through strategy, it helps really hone in on what we need to focus on in order to push the business forward. So I think it's one of the most important things a business owner can do in order to push the needle forward. Now, from what I've seen and the clients that I deal with, it just doesn't happen. I mean, a lot of the times in my accounting business, a lot of the times clients aren't focusing on this stuff and we're getting too caught up in the day-to-day and whatever that may be. If in my case, maybe it's doing tax returns or it's doing a BAS or if it's out on site or billing clients, whatever it may be, you want to put some time aside so you can step back and you can focus on all of that high level stuff, whether it's your pricing, whether it's your company culture or implementing a new service line, whatever it may be, it is something that you do want to focus on. So that's the picture that I couldn't work out how to do, Petra, by the way. Sorry. So to jump into the first tool that we use, and I think it's the most important tool, it's now, where, how. So essentially where the business is now, and I've put some examples at the bottom there that you can use. So you can scribble this on a piece of paper. We like to do this exercise on a whiteboard. So where we are now in terms of revenue, you can use the past 12 months, the past month, pick a time block that you want to use, and then run through this exercise. So as an example, our revenue, what's our revenue at? Is it, call it, I don't know, $500,000, $1 million? What's our profit on that revenue? What products or services are we offering? And I want you to just think what you're doing now, what you've done in the last 12 months. Don't let the ideas come in now. Try and hold back. What processes do we have now? And what issues and opportunities have we seen or are going to arise? Sorry, not arise, but that we have seen, or opportunities that we've seen in the last 12 months. And once we've done that, we want to talk about where we want to get to. A lot of the times it's people start with now and they go, okay, my revenue is X amount. I want to get to, I need more clients. I'm just going to start marketing, and they're shooting blind. So I think it's really important that we don't just jump to how we're going to do it. So we don't want to just think hiring, I'm so busy, staff is going to be my solution. We want to work out where we're going to get to before we work out how we're going to get there. So what would that look like? And I'll use an example of marketing. James, and feel free to jump in if I'm not making sense with my metrics, but let's say we want to increase revenue by $500,000. Okay, cool. So we would now draw these same bullet points in the where, next to the where circle. And if we want to increase revenue by $100,000, cool. We know that's where we want to get to. How are we going to get there? That's when we start talking about the marketing. So that's when we start talking about, okay, well, how much are we going to invest in our marketing spend to drive the revenue? And then you'll find that all of these things tie into each other. So, okay, cool. If we drive revenue by 200,000 or to stick with 100,000, do we have enough staff in order to sustain that revenue growth? Well, if not, we need to look at the people that we have and, okay, cool. So that means we also need to hire someone. But do we have the processes in place in order to hire that person and continue to drive that growth? It's just really not as simple as, okay, cool, want more customers, I'll spend money on marketing. There's so many other things that are going to happen in the background before we get to that end goal. And on this as well, I should have mentioned at the beginning, you want to pick a time frame. For me, I like to use 12 months. Yeah, so where we are as of today, and let's look forward 12 months. Or we can even just use this calendar year as well. So that's a small example of what the revenue could look like. And I'll also touch on profit. So if our profit margin is, say, 5 or 10%, but we want to get to 20, well, how are we going to do that? Is it increasing our prices? Is it finding cheaper suppliers? Is it conducting a cost-cutting exercise? You want to get into that mindset of thinking for all of these bullet points. And these are just an example. There are more. There can be more as well. So when you're running through this, it's just going to help you with making those changes. And back to that, the previous slide, it's just going to help drive that direction. It's a no-brainer. I think if out of today's presentation and out of all of the different tools, all the different strategy tools that we use that I run through today, this one, in my opinion, is probably the most important one. And I think in turn, it's something that can be done, again, like piece of paper, draw the 3 circles and just start. Don't get analysis paralysis. And if it doesn't look right, just get started. That would be my suggestion. This is something that Zara and I talk about a lot on the podcast. We talk about the Pareto Principle. And we did a podcast and I couldn't pronounce the guy's name. And anyway, Zara was laughing at me, but it was quite painful. But thanks, Zara. And this is essentially talking about Mr. Pareto, I'm going to refer to him as, and how in the early 1900s, he realized that 80% of the land in Italy was actually owned by 20% of the people. And what we find is that in business, this just relates everywhere. So you can see here, I've got that line through the middle. Again, sorry, Petra, I couldn't work out how to get rid of it. But we find that 20% of our customers provide us with 80% of our revenue, and 20% of our people are providing us with 80% of our problems. And you can just apply this to so many things. So why have I spoken about this? It's just, again, we can come up with all of these great ideas, and that's fantastic. But which ones are really going to help us make progress in our businesses? And look, sometimes you're going to record everything that we're going through. And when you do these exercises, that's all good. And just because we're not working on something now, it doesn't mean that we're not going to work on it in the future. If you've read Gino Wickman's book, Traction, he refers to it as his issues list, where they park it because it's something that we're not going to work on in the next couple of, I think it's 3 months, but it's something that we are going to come back to. So we don't want to just, we want to come up with these ideas, but if we don't work on them now, we will come back to them. So for this exercise, it's just the main focus. It's just to really rein in on what the focus is going to be, essentially, how we're going to drive the results. And I mentioned Gino Wickman's book just then. There's probably 2 books I'd really recommend. There's 3 books I'd really recommend for strategy. First one is Traction by Gino Wickman. That's a really easy read. He's got some awesome exercises in there to run through with 1-page plans and some different exercises, how to record your quarterly goals. And it's a super easy read. So I strongly recommend that for anyone in the community. And that's probably going to be the book that we speak about in the next book club. I know I put one in there yesterday. That's something that we're going to start doing every month, I believe. So I suggest Gino Wickman, Attraction by Gino Wickman. I'd also suggest Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. Now that one's a bit more in depth, and it's a bit like a uni textbook, to be honest. It's a bit of a painful read, but there's some super valuable insights there. And you'll find that a lot of the, whether it's Scaling Up or Traction, a lot of it sort of intertwines, and you'll see that the points that they're trying to get across They're very similar, and it's very similar to these exercises that I'm talking through today. And the third book is Blue Ocean Strategy. That's more high level and not so specific, and it doesn't give you as much actionable things to do as the first two, but that's one that I'd recommend as well. I can't remember the name of the author. Let me just Google it. Renee, I'm going to butcher that. I'll post it in the chat. But yeah, I'd strongly recommend those three books, those three readings to assist with getting in this mindset of strategy. This vision board is something that really does tackle the whole business. Now, these tools all you'll find once you start going through this stuff, you'll start to get a lot of the same things will start to come up, and that's where you can really hone in on your focus and you know what to work on. So I'll just run through all of this stuff line by line, and again, feel free to ask any questions around the vision map. But in terms of finance, and you'll see here that it really breaks down the business in five different segments. So finance, the market, products and services, people, and passion. Now, even if it's just yourself in the business, you can still focus on all of these things. Now, we speak a lot about business silos or different segments of the business, and the ones that we talk about a lot are finance, operations, sales, and marketing. What I've started to do is put that sales and marketing together and then have the fourth silo is like HR and people. So this covers all of that. And again, just to reiterate, even if it's just yourself or if you've got 2 people or 3 people, you can definitely implement all of this stuff. You can still have your silos of the business. So I don't want anyone to think, regardless of their size, if they're too small, even if you're too big, that you can't implement any of the tools that we're going to talk through today or any of the things that we speak about. So to start to go through this from the vision side, from the finance side of things, so we want to talk about our growth targets. So what are our growth targets? Again, you want to draw a line in the sand so you've got something to be aiming for. And where will that growth come from? Is it our existing clients? Do we need to get more clients? Is it our pricing model? There's so many different ways to interpret these questions, which is great because it's going to get all the thoughts flowing, which is what we want. Profit. So what level of profitability will we target? And again, it's very similar to the first question where it's okay, cool. So is that going to come from pricing? Is it going to come from introducing new services, new products, whatever it may be? And funding, like where will this growth come from? So if we're targeting to grow by 20 or 30%, well, what does that look like from an operational perspective? Do we have enough staff to do that work? Well, if we don't, and I'll use a trade business as the example, if we don't have enough staff, we're going to have to hire another staff member. Okay, cool. So that's another wage. That could be another, depending on their level, anything from $70,000 to $100,000 in wages. That's all good. But what we're not factoring in that is we're not factoring in the cost of a new ute or the cost of a new van. So what does that cost? That van or ute could cost $30,000. Cool, that's all good. But we also need to put tools in that ute. Call it another, if it's a plumber, it could be a jetter, it could be a camera, that could be another 20 grand. So that comment of, we want to increase our revenue by 20%. Well, how are we going to fund that? Because if we don't have 60 grand, well, you don't need the wage up front, but call it quick maths. Well, let's say the wage is 80,000. Where does that six and a half grand a month, where's that going to come from? Do we have enough? If we do, fantastic. But if that wage means we need to put them in a ute and we need to fund that ute purchase, well, how are we going to fund that $60,000 or $70,000 purchase? That's the way you need to start thinking about these things. It's all good that we want to grow to X amount of top line, but again, we want to make sure we're profitable and we want to make sure that we can fund it. That's super important too. So on that ute example, you need to prompt that conversation of, okay, well, we need to get the ball rolling for the finance for a new ute. And even if it's an office job per se, well, the equipment may be the laptop and the computer screen. And yeah, it's not as much, but it still needs to be a thought. That wage could be more expensive. So they all tie into each other. It's that method of thinking, how everything is linked, and all the decisions that we make in this presentation. Again, now where how everything is linked. So to talk to marketing, and Zara and James, feel free to correct me on any of this. But to speak high level, we want to make sure that we're focusing on our industry. So we know, and I know it's a very basic question, but like, what industry are we in? What are the emerging trends? Now, I'll use my own industry as an example, but in the accounting field, yes, I'm in the accounting field, but what are the emerging trends? There's a big shift to AI and automation. And I think that's the same with any business, to be honest. And even in the trade space, I can only talk to plumbing, to be honest, because I do know the industry. But a big thing happening there is like a new technology called relining. It's been around for a while, yes, but it's starting to emerge. So what are the emerging technologies, regardless of industry? What do you see happening in the next 12 months, or where are we at now? So I think regardless of industry, you need to be looking at what's going on where we operate. You don't want to get left behind. If you can find a way to implement, whether it's AI or whether it's automations, if you can find a way to implement this stuff, you're just going to reap the dividends. Again, it refers back to profit. Like if we're targeting a 20% profit margin, and we can implement a piece of software or a certain tool to drive that profitability, but even if it's 1 or 2%, like it's a significant change. And that doesn't even talk to reducing wage costs. All of this stuff ties in. I think it's super important that we don't bury our heads in the sand in what's happening in our industry, to be brutally honest. I think we need to be on the forefront of all of this stuff. And there's some great material. We'll discuss this stuff in the Texpert sessions that we're running every week. But even online, have a Google, even on YouTube. I'm sure there's people in each person's niche where there's someone there that's talking about this stuff, because it is the buzzword at the moment. The whole AI thing and automation, it really is the buzzword. So that's why it's really important just to stay on top of your industry and what's going on. Pardon me. Something else that we should be focusing on with the vision is our customer. So who's our ideal customer, and how will we win the new business? And again, this is something to keep high level. James, if you'd like to jump in, or Zara, feel free to. But we want to make sure that we have that customer avatar. So that way our marketing is more targeted. We don't want to be too wide. We want to make sure that when we do cast our net, that everyone that we want to be targeting is in that net. So that way our marketing spend can be more efficient. And the same for our products and services too, because all of that does tie in. In terms of competitors, I actually think this is really important to keep an eye on what they're doing, especially those people that we know are a couple of years ahead of us. If there are gaps in the market too, but I think the most important thing is, given that people are much more open now in terms of what they're doing in their business, and there's just access to information is so easy now, or it's easier than it's ever been. I think it's important to see what they're doing, because if you can approach a business owner that's 2 or 3 years ahead of you, and you're able to pick their brain, all it takes is like one piece of information, and like that can start, God knows what it can start. And I'll use the example of, I was doing like a course where it was specific for accountants, and they were speaking about how to get in front of like a lot of people and so we could grow our business. That was the focus. And they mentioned all the different types of media that we can be doing, and podcasting was one of them. And then, so I went on a journey and met up with Owen, and like the rest is history now. Now we're running the business podcast. But just to show you how, if you can speak to someone that is a couple of years ahead of you, and they've done everything and made all the mistakes, that's the only thing I got from that. It's like, okay, cool, podcast, and then the rest is history. That has been, like, I would say, probably the single most important thing in our business, in our business growth. It's that one golden nugget from speaking to that one person that was 5 or 10 years ahead of where we were. And it just really hit home for me, especially in competitors, and more so, I guess, less so for competitors, but more so people that are ahead of where we were in business at the time. Products and services. Again, what products and services will we build? What products and services will we offer, and how do we satisfy a future need in our target market? This is regardless of what we're doing, regardless of industry, whether product or service. Again, you can just note these down. What we're doing. Are there any opportunities to do other things at the same time? Whether it's a product, can you upsell at the cart level, or if it's a service, can we really spread our wings and offer other services? And I'll use myself as an example, where if we are doing bookkeeping for a client, we can then do their BAS and we can then do their tax returns. It's about being able to have a vast array of different service offerings so we can maximize each the value we get from each client. And it's a two-way street too, because yes, we're providing that value, but we're rewarded for that financially. So, pardon me, super important part of business. And again, that's why keeping an eye on what's happening in industry can help you in establishing these new service lines or new products. So how do we satisfy a future need in our target market? We want to try and preempt anything that we can see coming up in the market so we can stay on top of it. An interesting one, and I think we all do it, to be honest, is what we need to stop doing in our business. So what do we need to stop doing in terms of products and services? And I'm sure we're all doing it, where there's one service line that we're offering that is just maybe not costing us money, but we know we're not making much money on it. So I think if you can reduce the service lines that you're doing, it really goes far in allowing you to focus on those profitable services or those profitable products. So I think that's a really important one too. And sometimes it's a really hard chat, because if that makes up a large portion of your business, it's a big ask to just cut it. And I'm not saying to do that. If you need to gradually come off it or whatever it may be, it is important that that's front of mind as well. But again, you won't know that unless you're on top of your numbers, or you're on top of your pricing, or the financial side of your business. So I wouldn't just do that at whim. I'd make sure you have some type of method to the madness, per se. SCA, so that stands for your sustainable competitive advantage, and it's essentially what makes you different from Joe Blow down the road or your competitors down the road. So why would I go to you as opposed to your competitor? So high level, people. Who's going to lead the business? 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the people on the call at the moment. But in saying that, I think this is a really good segue into starting to build out your organizational chart. And we will talk about that. I believe it's next week. But again, even if it's just you, we can start to silo out the business, and we can start to put some time in the calendar where we're going to work on the innovation in the business, or we're going to work on the sales, or we're going to work on the marketing, finance, or operations, whatever it may be. It's a good time to start to think about that too in prep for next week. So who's going to be leading the business and who are the key people? Start to build out that organizational chart and get in that method of thinking. Now, capabilities. What new capabilities in the team are required to be successful? So are the right people in the right seats? Sometimes we put off having these hard conversations when they're not. So something to keep in mind. Now, in terms of team, where are we based? What's our team structure? Again, to double down on that organizational chart and what that looks like. This is something that we'll walk you through next week on how to start building that and where to spend your time and how to allocate it. If it's just yourself, it'll be about putting time in the calendar to work on these specific things. And even if you have a team, 9 times out of 10, that team is going to be consistent of people that are actually producing the work. So you're still going to have, yes, you'll have an org chart, but it's going to be a really vertical focus on getting the actual work done. It's not going to have the focus on working on the sales or working on the marketing or the finance side of things. So we want to start to build those charts out. Any questions around people, leadership capabilities, or team? Cool. So moving on to passion, it's a bit about why we're doing what we do, what the purpose is. Is it to make as much money as possible? That's all good. Is it to maximize the time we can spend with our loved ones, with our family and friends, with kids? Why do we wake up in the morning and go to work? It just helps on those days where we all have them, where you just don't want to work and you don't want to do anything. Having the purpose mapped out really does help with that, because having those days, it's so normal. And hustle culture is all good and it's great. But some days, sometimes you just can't be bothered. And having the purpose mapped out, it helps with that, because it's a reminder. It's a reminder of why we're doing what we're doing, and why we get up in the morning. So I think that's really important, regardless of size. I think, you know what, now that I'm thinking about it, it probably is one of the more important things, because it helps on those shitty days that we all have. And anyway, purpose. Impact. So what excites us? If so, why? And if it doesn't, well, what needs to change in order to do that? So it just all ties in: passion, purpose, giving back, community. This is what helps you on those tough days. And again, once you do start making those progress, the progress, it helps you stay grounded and helps you to come back to why we're doing what we're doing. So in my experience, I think the most important thing that we need to let go of is those general admin tasks. And like, every business has their own admin tasks, and they're just the most low value tasks that you can give to someone else. Things like organizing your inbox, emails. Once the admin tasks you're on top of the admin task, it's doing of the actual work. It's the hardest thing to let go of. But as soon as you can bring someone in, regardless of your business, to do the technical work, whether it's, making the fireplaces, or it's roasting the coffee, or running the cafe, if you can bring someone else to do that stuff, it'll give you so much more time to work on these high level tasks. And you just need to be comfortable letting go of the reins a bit, and you need to be comfortable that these people may make mistakes. And I think the easiest way to try and stay on top of that and mitigate these mistakes is to have your processes down pat. I think that's the most important thing, regardless of which area of the business. It's having the processes in place where you can try and mitigate these risks. Invoicing, payroll, even payables, all of that stuff, it takes up time, and it's just, it's just a low value. It's not going to grow the business. Yes, sending out invoices will, because we need the money to come in, but you don't need to be doing that. Your time is best spent elsewhere. It's best spent, working on efficiencies, working on the strategy of the business, and what's going to drive the most revenue. That's where your time needs to be spent. I'll talk through a SWAT. So something that we always did at uni, and I thought it was very fluffy, but ever since being in business, I think it's something that helps with focus. So if anyone hasn't seen it before, a SWOT stands for your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and your threats. And now there's some examples in there on just to prompt you when you're running through these things. And you essentially just want to write down all of the strengths of the business, any of the weaknesses, what are the opportunities, and what are the threats. The strategic SWOT, what that is, it's how can we use our strengths to help commercialize opportunities. So you'll see that's why it's important to fill it out before you start doing these questions. How can we use our strengths to overcome any threats? And again, these will give you action points on things you can do to improve the business or improve opportunity that could arise. How can we stop weaknesses from impacting negatively on the opportunities? And again, it's going to start to prompt all of these thoughts, and everyone's going to come up with different things when they're doing these exercises. But I just think it's so important. What we're going to do is, on the fly, Petra will put together these as like templates, so that way you can fill them all in as you're going, and you can use them as worksheets, and then you can go from there. And this will be a really good starting point. Force field example. So if one of the things that we come up with is to free up 20% of time, we want to talk through the negatives and we want to talk through the positives to weigh up if this is something that we really need to focus on working on. I'll run through this in a lot more depth when we upload the training videos this week. But just to keep things high level, like, what are the positives from freeing up 20% of our time? We'll have a good team, proactive meetings, introducing technology, like all clear benefits. But we can also talk about the negatives as well, because what we don't want to do when we're doing these exercises, whether it's the now, where, how, or the vision map, is you're going to come up with a lot of ideas and a lot of things to work on. This is a really good exercise to help pinpoint which one we should be working on at any given point in time. So super important exercise to run through. Once we've really mapped out the how. That would really help with it. And then mind mapping as well. So if our focus is to drive revenue by 20%, we'll write that in the middle, and then we can come up with all different ideas on how we can do that. So if the focus is SEO, then our bullet points here would be, hire an SEO agency, or write, an article a week, or focus on backlinks. Or is it organic? Is our focus going to be organic socials? It's record 3 videos a week. Is it Facebook ads? Is it Google ads? It's something that you can just do a whiteboard or a piece of paper, and then going from there. And I actually use this exercise for heaps of things, to be honest. I think it's really good. And another one that I like to use is like a magic wand. I haven't included it here today, but I'll walk you through it. It's essentially, if you could wave the magic wand and fast forward 2 years, what does that look like in your business? And that can help with these focus points too. And then once we've done all this stuff, we'll have our one-page plan. Now, this essentially brings everything together, all of the exercises that we've gone through. And there's a ton of different versions of this, depending on what system that you follow. Traction has their own one-page plan. It's a bit different to this. It's a lot more in-depth. There's scaling up as well, which is even more in-depth than Traction. We've used both. I've personally used both, and I think they're both fantastic. But if you haven't used any of those, either of the Traction one-page plan or the scaling up one-page plan, this is the best one to start with, because it's much more simplified, and then you can transition into these much more in-depth ones. But what we do is we note down where we are now and where we want to get to. So that way we've peg in the ground, and then we know what the end post looks like. Note all that down, and that all comes from this slide. So whether it's revenue, profit, people, issues, whatever it may be, they're all going to sit in this one-page plan. We'll note down the strategies. If it's to drive revenue by 20%, what does that look like? Engage a marketing firm, or if it's to reduce my monthly time spent doing bookkeeping, what's the action plan, and when do you want to implement? I think that's super important. It's to have that accountability piece as well as a time frame. Otherwise, it's just going to get pushed to the side every week. So that's super important as well. As well as that, I'll do it in my so I'll be uploading an in-depth breakdown of each of these tools at the end of the week. And if you've got any questions, you can just post them in the community, and then we can go from there. But look, I think in terms of business strategy, that's been the number one driving factor of growth in my business personally. And I think it's the most important thing. Like I said at the start of the session, a lot of people just aren't working on this stuff because they get caught up in the day-to-day, which is very normal. But if you can try and separate yourself from the day-to-day operations and just put your thinking cap on to focus on these high-level tasks, you're just going to see a massive return on the time that you're spending. So look, that's all I had for today in terms of running through things. Feel free to ask any questions about any of the tools that I've gone through, or any questions on strategy that you have. Keen to hear if people have done this before. Dan and I do this when we organize a full day to run through these tools. And during that day, we usually do a weekend, to be honest, because on the weekends, we don't get any client calls. As much as we try and get off the tools, you're always going to get client calls. So the way that we combat this is to do it on the weekends. So we'll book out a weekend offsite, or a day offsite, whiteboard. We'll have our slides prepped. I'll post these slides as well, so you can work through them if you did want to work through them. And that's where we plan a lot of our stuff for the whole financial year. So we're practicing what we preach, to be honest. But yeah, thanks everyone. Bye guys.
Thanks for watching this episode of the podcast. If you want to hear more from us, you can get daily videos and podcasts on Rask's YouTube channel. Or if you want to enroll in a free course on investing, property, business, money, you name it, you can join over 34,000 other students and enroll in a free course on the Rask website. Simply head to www.rask.com.au and follow the prompts. Thanks for watching this Rask podcast.